I'm starting this company and I'm going up against Mott's, Ocean Spray, Minute Maid, Tropicana. And the customers that I'm selling are Walmart, Publix, Stop and Shop, Costco, the biggest buyers on the planet. And people would say to me, are you crazy? There's no way you're going to be able to pull this off.
Gordon Crane, founder of Apple and Eve, introduced the first organic juices and first juice boxes in America. He grew the business to $245 million in revenue and sold it for a reported $150 million in 2014.
So let me get this straight. I'm doing all the work, but I am not getting any of the fruits from my labor. I realized then and there I was never going to work for another company.
You scaled the brand from zero to hundreds of millions of dollars. What was the point when you thought this might actually work?
I looked in the supermarkets and I didn't see anything like the product that we were selling.
Were there any times when you came close to losing it all?
90% of my net worth was in the business. I was always in fear the company could potentially go under. I get a phone call from the Boston Herald, one of the worst days in my business career. And they said, well, that's the story we're going with. Any comment?
How many millions do you think the company blew on that?
I was looking for someone to talk to tell me which way to go. We were offered $1 million for the company, and I was seriously considering it because I thought that would be rich. And then there were numbers along the way of 5 million, 10 million, and 50 million.
Your company eventually did get acquired for $150 million.
I was on the 16th hole. The wire transfer came through.
You're just refreshing over and over?
You think?
Do you say how much you personally got from that?
I don't think I've shared that number with anyone. My kids don't know that number. My wife doesn't know that number. How's that?
The money talks, let's keep it real.
So you founded Apple and Eve in 1975. Before being an entrepreneur was a cool job. What made you start your own company and why apple juice?
I'd have to go back to a childhood memory of mine that really helped to frame my entrepreneurship. And that is that my dad worked for a company his practically his entire adult life. And I distinctly remember one day him coming home and saying, you know, I'm doing all the work, but I am not getting any of the fruits from my labor. And I realized then and there that I was never going to work for another company. I had to do my own thing and run my own show. And so I guess that's where the seeds were that planted the proverbial apple tree.
And you took the fruits of your labor literally. You heard that and you said, yeah,
exactly.
fruit. Yeah, let's do it.
Right.
So yeah, why apple juice? What made you, of all the businesses you could do?
So I was a long-haired hippie into natural foods, meditation and yoga while I was in college. And you have to realize the time frame we're talking about, late 60s, early 70s, when this whole culture just was spawning. So after school, I came back to New York, where I grew up, moved into Manhattan, and was looking for something in the natural food arena. I actually saw an ad in what was the Village Voice at the time for a granola distributorship. And the name of the company was Good Shepherd. I interviewed to get the New York rights to it, and I was turned down. The company that was selected was a Long Island natural foods distributor. And so I reached out to them and said, who do you have running New York? And they said, nobody. I said, well, I'll handle it. And I ended up becoming partners with this Long Island-based natural foods distribution company and a partner in it. And we did that for a few years. And I realized that I didn't want to be in the food distribution business for my entire life, that I wanted to become a professional. And so I decided to go to law school. I had no way to pay my way through law school. I wasn't going to live it back at home with my parents. I needed money for tuition. And so I took a germ of an idea. The best-selling item off my trucks in the natural foods company was apple juice. And so I looked in the supermarkets and I didn't see anything like the product that we were selling in the natural food stores. And I launched the first unfiltered natural style apple juice in supermarkets at the time.
So since it's money talks, let's go back to the beginning. What was your relationship with money growing up? Were you driven by money? Was that the goal?
No, I grew up of really humble beginnings, aspiring middle-class family. And I really didn't know very much about money. Money certainly didn't talk much in my home. If anything, when my mother would hear my father complain about money, she'd get upset because it was not of the greatest importance to her. There were much more important things in life and other values that she aspired to. So no, it wasn't really, a burning desire on my part from childhood to make a lot of money.
You just started selling juice to pay your way through law school. What was the point when you thought like, this might actually work? Like there's something here.
So I went to law school, and so 3 years later, so now I'm in the end of the third year of law school. The company was doing $1 million in sales that year. And I was still thinking of just now turning the business over to my two brothers who had joined in and my mom who was running the office. And I started interviewing with law firms. So that is proof of the fact that Apple and Eve, the company that I gave birth to and formulated, et cetera, was not my vision going forward. It was to be an attorney. And I started interviewing with law firms. Time and time again during those early interviews, the attorney that was interviewing me would say something like, so let me get this straight. You are the president and founder of a juice company that just did $1 million in sales this year, and you want to stop what you're doing and work for this turkey law firm? And I'd walk out of there saying, well, that's a nice way of him saying that he's not interested in my services. But by the third time, I said, I think there's something here. I gave it a little thought and decided to take the road less traveled and stay with the company.
So how fast was the business doing $1 million a year? That was like a couple years in?
Third year.
Third year. What was like the profit like at that? Was it already profitable, or was it just like one day this will be profitable?
Yeah, it was profitable from practically the first day, simply because of the way I set it up. So the model was I didn't have the money to be buying apple orchards or processing equipment or bottling equipment. So what I did was basically created the company as a marketing company, a sales and marketing company. So I owned the brand, and then I would contract out, obviously, all the growing. So I was buying fruit from growers from the Hudson Valley, New York, and having the juice pressed by a local cider mill, shipped to a bottling company in Massachusetts, bottled with my label on it, and then shipped to customers that I was out selling. So other than the carrying costs of inventory and account receivable, I had very little overhead, if any, and was profitable from, within the first 6 months.
That's cool. I think it's so different from how people build businesses now, where they go raise venture capital right away and, try and hire all these people and get fancy offices. It's cool to hear a story like that. So were you taking money out of the business from day one, kind of like looking at it as like, yeah, we just want to make money from this and pay our bills? Or were you just reinvesting back into the business always?
Yes, I was taking some money out, but it was really just for living expenses because most of the money had to stay in the business to grow. Now, let me give you an insight into what that means, meaning not only did I need the account receivable financing and the inventory financing, but now I had to get on store shelves. Getting on supermarket store shelves is probably one of the most difficult jobs on the planet. And it's called buying shelf space or slotting fees. And so I would go into these major supermarket accounts and put my product on the table, trying to sell them. And if they were interested, what they were looking to do was receive thousands of dollars up front for the right to have my product on the supermarket shelf. And so all of our money was going into buying shelf space and launching new products. So although we started out selling bottled apple juice, actually in a 32-ounce bottle, and then a 64-ounce bottle, and then we came out with a line of cranberry juice blends, and then we came out with juice in refrigerated cartons. And then we came out with different flavors. So the SKU development, SKU stands for stock keeping unit. So we were constantly investing in new products, getting new products onto the shelves of existing supermarkets, and then opening up new markets. So we were opening up New York, we were opening up Boston, Albany, Syracuse, Buffalo, Washington, D.C., and the list goes on and on. I mean, all the way down to Florida, to Publix. And by the time I exited 40 years later, we were selling every supermarket chain in the country. And we had over 150 products in different package forms and flavors.
Wow, yeah. It's funny you brought that up about getting onto shelves, because that was one of my points. I was like, breaking into grocery stores is notoriously tough. And I was wondering if there was something you remember doing, like some crazy story of taking out a sales rep or something that, investing a bunch of money to get in front of them. Was there any stories that come to mind of trying to get into grocery stores?
So first of all, the early days were filled with really mind-blowing stories of how we got on supermarket shelves. Like I remember there was a small chain in New York. It doesn't exist anymore, called Shopwell, actually Date Shopwell. And here I'm meeting with David Daitch, part of the family that owned the business and the buyer. And I put my product on the table and he says, "Looks good. I think I'd like to buy it." I said, "Great." Takes out a purchase order. He writes down 1,000 cases, Apple and Eve juice. And then in the price column, N/C. I said, "What does N/C stand for?" He says, "No charge." I said, "No charge?" He says, "Young man," he says, "do you expect me to invest my money to find out whether you've got a product that will sell?" So that was my first introduction to slotting fees. There were hundreds of other stories, but basically, yeah, you had to figure out a way to pay the piper. And we would do it with free goods because that would limit our cost. We would do it with buy 1,000 cases, get 200 free. So at least we would have a purchase order. But no, there was all of our investment went into paying slotting fees. And then, of course, getting some product awareness. Gaining product awareness back in those days was extremely difficult and very different than what it is today.
I remember when I was trying to do my cookie business, it was a lot of those things where they would say, "Yeah, we'd love to try you out. Yeah, that'll be $8,000 per flavor." And you go, "What? Like, I don't have $40,000, in the early days to throw out and try it out." What was a mistake that you made early on, looking back on, with money? Or something you bought or an investment you made that didn't turn out?
Wow, there are so many. Fortunately, I did more things right than wrong, but there were many things that we did wrong. Although I'm not proud of this part of Apple and Eve history, I'll tell you that, so I mentioned a little bit ago that we would take our apple cider and ship it up to a bottler in Massachusetts for bottling. Now I'm in law school. I'm not overseeing the actual filling, bottling of the product. I'm trusting the bottler. They're putting my label on it. I know what I shipped in, but unbeknownst to me, they were adulterating the product. So they were adding sugar water to the juice and flavor, and the end product was not 100% juice at one point. And I get a phone call in my third year of law school from the Boston Herald saying to me that they've tested my product and they found that it contains added sugar. I said, that's just not possible. We ship in pure cider. There's only pure cider in the bottle. And they said, well, that's the story we're going with. Any comment? And I hung up the phone and I started digging into it. And lo and behold, there was adulteration going on. And so I had to scramble my third year in law school while I'm preparing for the bar. I had to scramble and find another bottler to move all of my production to. And so what did I learn there? I learned trust but verify. And then, there were obviously dozens and dozens of product failures along the way, products that we would launch that didn't resonate with the consumer, or we didn't have the marketing funds to support the product line. But again, fortunately, there was more right done than wrong.
That's a scary moment, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What's something you spent money on early on that you think most founders wait too long to invest in?
When you're building a business, it's all about leverage. And by leverage, you're leveraging every asset you have. So you're leveraging your brand and your reputation, but you're really leveraging your people. So you can't minimize the value of bringing in the right people and putting them in the right seats on the bus. And you've got to pay for that. You got to pay for that talent. And if you try to scrimp there, it's going to bite you big time. So it's investing in people. We did a good job of that. We could have done a better job of that. But it's certainly on the human resource front.
That's the best investment.
The best investment, yeah.
I mean, you started Apple and Eve over 50 years ago. What do you think would be the same about starting a business now, and what would be different?
The speed to market then was completely different than the speed to market today. So we were able to launch a brand and a product line and watch it grow slowly over years and let it marinate and let it grow organically. Again, one product line at a time, one supermarket chain at a time, one geographic area at a time. You couldn't do that today because of competition and because of communication and because of information awareness. So in the old days, you could launch a product in New York and your competitors in the Southwest wouldn't know about it, or the Northwest. Today, they would know about it the day after your product was on the shelf, and they would know exactly how it was doing by product SKU, by account, because all of that information is readily available. So I was able to grow the business. In fact, I would say that, we were the turtle that won the race just by sticking to what we knew would work, but executing it slowly. You don't have that luxury today. The second biggest thing that changed and would have influenced our growth, in this case in a much more positive way, is, do you know what it was like in the 70s and 80s and 90s and even 2000s to gain product awareness? It was done through conventional media advertising. It was done through newspaper ads, radio ads. It was done through television ads, cable at the time. Buying cable was a unique and differentiated way of reaching a targeted demo. There was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was no social media, there was no way to communicate to a certain demographic, let alone a certain demographic, a defined demographic in one geographic area, and pay just for that. You had to pay for newspaper ads that would run and reach everyone of every age and demo, whether or not they bought juice or didn't even know what juice was.
Were you really good at creating ads that worked? Would you try a lot of different ads on those older mediums?
Yeah, we would run newspaper ads with coupons for clipping.
Okay.
And we would run radio ads. And we ran some television commercials, but the ROI was not there because it was just not targeted. And what we learned was that the best way to communicate our product was really working through our customers, through the supermarkets themselves, with point of sale material and in-store marketing, in-store advertising, off-shelf displays, etc.
It's funny, so much changes, also so much kind of stays the same. Like at the end of the day, it's like have a great product, word of mouth, that compounds, right?
Yes.
You scaled the brand from zero to hundreds of millions of dollars. Was the growth pretty linear over the 40 years you ran the business, or were there a few game-changing moments where it jumped up?
It was pretty linear up until the point that I bought out a major competitor of ours. And that competitor basically was a copycat of a product line of ours. We created the first cranberry juice blends in the country to compete with Ocean Spray's cranberry juice drinks. A drink is defined as containing added sugar and water. We were blending very, very tart cranberry juice with apple juice to make it sweeter, and it was a 100% juice product. But another company was created in Wisconsin that mimicked or copied what we were doing and raised a lot of money. Didn't grow as fast as their feet were carrying them, and their money ran out, and we were able to buy the company. And in one fell swoop, we probably picked up 25% incremental business. And in addition, new shelf space, new customer base upon which we could introduce our products.
What was the jump in revenue around from that time, if you remember?
Yeah, it was probably from 120 million to 180 million.
Oh, so you're pretty big at that point already.
Yeah.
And from 0 to 100 million, or from...
Yeah, it was all organic.
It was pretty just
pretty linear.
Steady every year, kind of doubling,
Exactly.
tripling.
One product line at a time, one market at a time, one supermarket chain at a time.
So what takes you from 0 to $1 million business is very different than, let's say, $1 million to 100 million. What's something you had to unlearn as an entrepreneur in order to scale?
Let me start by saying that I had to learn everything on the fly. Mm-hmm. So if I knew when I was going to graduate school what I know now, or even knew then, I would have gotten an MBA from a top business school as opposed to going for my law degree. And so when I started the company, I really knew next to nothing about the supermarket industry, about getting products on shelves, about product formulation, about processing and bottling and branding and marketing and sales and finance. So I had to learn it all and played every role at the company in the early days. So from 0 to, $1 million and even $5 million and even $10 million, it was a very, very small group of people called my family involved in running the business. And the skill set that it took to launch the product was extremely different than the skill set that it took to then grow it to 5 million and 10 million and 50 million and 200 million and 250 million. And the roles that I played became extremely different. So whereas I started out where I was knocking on all the doors and selling all the supermarket chains myself or with my brothers, or I was going around to the apple orchards and buying the fruit and watching it processed and bottled. I obviously had, a complete sales force and marketing department, and I became, a manager of people and processes.
What's the first thing you delegated to free up your time when you were starting out?
Sales and procurement.
Did you delegate in a way where you said, I like doing this, so I'm going to do more of it, and I'm going to hire people to fill those other roles? Or was it just like the thing that needed the most attention, you just hired for that?
So the thing that I liked to do the most and thought I was best at, which was selling, became something that I hardly did at all as the years went on, because I just didn't have the time. And it also wasn't appropriate for the CEO to be going in and making his own sales calls unless it was a very high level call. When I talked about leverage earlier, it's like I had to, at different parts of my career, I was traveling the world, visiting apple orchards and grape orchards and cranberry bogs myself and buying fruit. I was at different times calling on various customers. I was meeting with branding companies and marketing companies. I was in the lab doing the product formulation. And I was meeting with accounting firms and law firms to oversee the corporate structure and the meeting with banks to arrange the financing. And that's what I ended up basically doing day to day, was overseeing all of the aspects of the business.
Did you miss the days of just buying cranberries and?
I did, and therefore, and for various reasons, I would travel around the world to visit different processing plants to see the state of the art of the industry, and visiting with the growers to understand their issues so that I could become a better buyer. Buying fruits, fruit juice concentrates from around the world, you are subject to all of the vagaries of nature. So there are early frosts that destroy the fruit on the vine, and that affect the availability of commodities and therefore the pricing of commodities. And unless you're in it to understand what the climatic conditions are, what the impact is on the growers, what their needs are in terms of planning for the future, and therefore what role I could play as a buyer to give them security so that they could plant more orchards, all became kind of a critical part of growing the business.
What do you think the best hires you made in your career were?
So this is going to sound a little, I'm not going to say self-serving, but probably the best addition to the company was one of the earliest, and that was hiring my brother Carrie, who oversaw sales for our company. So while I became the inside guy, he became the outside guy. And he had a very dynamic personality, was able to talk to a prince or a pauper in as relaxed a fashion, and gain their trust and buy-in. And people gravitated to him and loved him and wanted to do business with him. And the same went for our community of employees who loved him, and he would schmooze with them, interact with them, know their families, get to know them in a way that my personality wouldn't lend itself and my time availability wouldn't lend itself to. And so he helped to build the culture of the company from the inside, and he certainly helped to establish our customer base.
What were the pros and cons of working with family? I know you had your brothers, and then your mom was in the business. So
right. So partners come in all different forms and shapes, and whether or not it's blood or it's not blood, it carries its own unique set of issues that have to be navigated. Some are more complicated than others. It's hard to cut loose with blood, but there's no greater bond and common mission with blood. But blood doesn't always work out, and hiring what you believe to be the best and the brightest doesn't always work out, and both have to be navigated.
how do you incentivize people you hire if they aren't a partner or a brother?
So it's a great question. In fact, I mentioned earlier on that you want to bring on the best and the brightest, but bringing on the best and the brightest comes with a price. When you're small, you can't necessarily afford that talent. So you have to use the resources you have. If your resource is money, then you can pay with money, you can pay with stock options. We paid with culture. And I can't tell you how good a return in investing in culture was. And by culture, what I mean was the culture of our company was family culture. The family culture was the corporate culture, which was respect, trust, honesty, a safe network, a network within which people felt comfortable making mistakes, learning on the go. So we brought in often inexperienced people that showed promise, and again, created a culture that allowed them to blossom and grow and mature. And these people stayed with us for years. It's unheard of. You know today what it's like to retain good talent. Because basically talent goes to the highest bidder. And people were willing to sacrifice top dollar to work for us in a company that they knew appreciated their contribution. And yes, we rewarded, but we rewarded best as we could with pay and a good amount of just love.
So at one point you guys had Sesame Street characters on the juice boxes. How were you able to collaborate with Sesame Street?
That was a great development. So we're growing this brand, Apple and Eve, and as it turns out, the demographic for apple juice, grape juice, other juices that we were launching were young children. And in thinking about it, I'm saying, what can we do to get young families and young kids into our franchise early as possible? And at the time, the top children's show that appealed to 0 to 5 demographic was Sesame Street. So the Sesame Workshop was located in New York, Manhattan. And I went in and presented them with a licensing opportunity where I would license the Sesame Street characters and pay them a royalty. They had no food products at the time. There was Sesame Street diapers and toys. Fisher-Price, for example, pretty sure it was Fisher-Price was their licensee, and a host of others, baby wipes, the list goes on and on. But they had no food products. And they said, why not? And so we became the first food licensee. And that had to be 35 years ago. And Apple and Eve still retains the license, the exclusive license for Sesame Street juices in the U.S. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How much did that cost? Did you have to pay them up front, or was it just a
No, it was a
portion
royalty.
Do you remember what the royalty was?
It was under 5%. I think 4 or 5%.
Of just
Of
sales,
sales,
on
of net
those
sales.
specific juices.
Yeah.
Wow. That seems like a deal.
Yeah. Now, again, we had
It's a
to
huge
then
IP, right?
pay the shelf space to get the products on the market. But yeah, it was a great deal for them and a great deal for us. We therefore attracted the demo 0 to 5. The Apple and Eve logo was on every package. And consumers would see that it was Elmo or Big Bird apple juice brought to you by Apple and Eve. And then they started buying Apple and Eve.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What were the margins like in the juice business?
Terrible.
Really?
Absolutely terrible. The volume can be great, but the margins were very low. They were like on a gross margin basis in the low 20s, even high teens. And a net margin basis, you're working on 3% of sales.
That's kind of the whole company overall with
Something like,
your office and all your employees.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, you had some product lines that had a higher gross and net, but it's a very tight margin business. The good news is volume, and the good news is your customers are all paying in 10 days. So cash flow is good.
What were the biggest risks or investments you took over the years? Like, was there some point when you spent millions of dollars on something? I mean, the acquisition was pretty big, but...
Our acquisitions went well, but we launched product lines that didn't necessarily resonate. So, for example, we launched a product line. Well, first I'll tell you a good one, and then I'll tell you a couple of not so good ones.
Great.
So we decided to blend fruit juice with vegetable juice and launched Fruitables. And Fruitables became an extremely prominent part of the Apple and Eve portfolio. We launched a brand called Tribal Tonics, which was at the time, very innovative. So the products were, energy, relaxation. So we're using kava in the relaxation beverage, or ginkgo biloba in the mental acuity product, and caffeine in the energy product, and antioxidants, A, C, and E in a health-oriented product. And so it's a line of single-serve beverages that are appealing now instead of to families and kids 0 to 12, which was the sweet spot of our demo. We were now looking to expand our demo to teenagers, college age, and competing with the likes of Vitamin Water and Snapple. And obviously it wasn't our sweet spot. We were looking to expand and grow into it. And as years went on, others were able to do it successfully by having the focus and putting the right resources behind it, but we had neither. Neither did we understand the niche or did we support it properly to make it successful? And yeah, there were some product failures like that along the way.
How many millions do you think the company blew on that line trying that out?
So we weren't a company that was spending millions on new product lines. We would incubate. So we would launch, it might be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it wasn't millions of dollars.
Were there any times when you came close to losing it all?
No. Though there wasn't a day that went by when I didn't feel like there was a 600-pound gorilla that was just 8 steps behind me and that was going to crush me in an instant if I didn't continue running as fast as possible. So I was always in fear of my life and that the company could potentially go under. And by the way, that was the motivation to just work as hard and fast as we could. And we did.
So you bootstrapped the business. Did you raise any money along the way, or was it just using banks and lines of credit?
So we bootstrapped the business. My parents didn't even have $1,000 to give us. We bought our first labels using my dad's American Express card. So that was our early capital. And then the rest was generated basically from within. But as the company grew, we needed more and more money for, again, receivable financing, inventory financing, growth capital for new markets, new products. And so we did take on a minority partner in a small private equity deal. But believe it or not, that was 20 years in. So 20 years, that's why I'm saying it was a very different time.
Yeah.
Like first 20 years bootstrap. Then we brought in our first round of capital and paid for it dearly. One of my favorite expressions is, and I created over the years many that I called fruits from the tree or things learned along the way, but give away equity is a case of last resort, not first resort. Debt, although hard to get and seemingly very expensive, is the cheapest form of capital. Give away equity is a case of last resort.
So 20 years in, when you brought in that partner, how much equity did you give away and how much did you raise?
So I'm not going to talk numbers in terms of what we gave away, but we sold 20% of the company.
Okay.
Probably, if memory serves me, about 20 years in.
Okay.
And then, the private equity game is an interesting game. It's like now, 7 years later, they've got a put. They have the opportunity to put their shares to you. You have to buy them out at a formulaic price. And so where does that capital come from? You either then arrange the debt financing to buy them out, or you do a second round of equity financing, which is what we did. And then to buy them out, a third round of equity financing to buy your partners out until we finally sold the business. Which was 10 years ago.
So before the exit, was there any liquidation events for you or your partners?
So there was small amounts of, yes, along the way with each sale, where we would take on a private equity partner, take a private equity partner out and put a new private equity partner in. We would take some chips off the table, but they weren't really life-changing or meaningful until we finally sold the company.
So would you say almost 100% of your net worth in the company until 2014?
Close to it.
Wow.
And that was a source of real consternation and concern of mine because of the 600-pound gorilla that was just 8 steps behind me.
So did you even mentally separate business and personal finance your whole life? Or was it just like one kind of thought where all your net worth's in the business and you just thought about the business all day?
Right. 90% of my net worth was in the business, and therefore what I had personally accumulated and was invested in stocks and bonds, I hardly paid any attention to it all because my number one investment by far was the brand. And so it was all about protecting, building, growing the brand at all costs. And I would say back then that I would feel so much more comfortable if I was diversified, had a diversified portfolio, and let the CEOs of Apple and Microsoft and Berkshire Hathaway and Tesla determine my net worth rather than Gordon Crane.
But at the same time, your own business is probably the best vehicle for your wealth
creation.
Wealth creation, yeah.
No question about it.
Yeah. So you're saying, looking back, you wish you had kind of taken more off the table earlier so you could relax?
I don't. But what I meant to say was that when I did sell the company, I was thrilled to have a diversified portfolio.
Yeah.
And where everything wasn't just on my shoulders.
How'd you decide along the way? You said there was a few lump sums you got, whether to kind of reinvest in the business or take out. Was it just like taking a smaller salary every year and, besides that, everything reinvested in the business? Or how'd you think about that?
So again, until I brought on private equity partners, where I had therefore a fiduciary responsibility to them, I was taking off the table a share of the profits every year. And that was great. And in good years, I did very well. And in lean years, I didn't. And I was able to take a nice salary. But the lion's share by far stayed in the business for reinvestment.
Yeah, I think a common misconception is that everyone running a successful or well-known brand is rich the whole time. And often it takes years and years before they can actually take something meaningful off the table, right?
Yeah, certainly that wasn't the case in my case. And you want to know something? I'm so glad that it happened the way it happened, both in terms of my lifestyle and my view of money and my spending habits and the spending habits and view of money that I passed on to my kids. They grew up, yes, in a family of means, but by no means of rich, wealthy, and able to spend with any reckless abandon.
That's good. Yeah, balance. So did you feel rich before the exit?
As the years went on, I felt, look, rich is all relative. And rich is also defined in many ways. So I was incredibly rich in terms of love and family and values and peace of mind, and very, very rich beyond words in the personal satisfaction of having created and grown not only my own business, but this business. This business that brought me involved in nature and in natural food products and natural fruits and the whole cycle that we talked about, just immensely rewarding. But rich, as you asked the question, we certainly grew up of means, but I never considered myself rich.
Was there a number that you were like, if I had this much money, I would feel rich?
Along the way, there was those numbers, and those numbers never proved to be the number that subsequently I would consider to be wealthy. So there was a time in year, might have been 5 or 6, where we were offered $1 million for the company, and I was seriously considering it because I thought that would be rich. And then there were numbers along the way of 5 million and 10 million and 50 million. And those numbers, especially when involving other families and shareholders, would not constitute rich.
So your company eventually did get acquired for $150 million. What can you say about that number? Like, how much of that actually goes in the owner's pocket?
So the answer depends upon what percentage of the company does the owner own, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that obviously varies by company, but that goes back to one of the fruits from the tree, which is give away equity as a case of last resort. So yes, at the end of the day, besides family shareholders, there were external shareholders that participated in that sale.
Do you say how much you personally got from that, or you'd rather not?
I don't think I've shared that number with anyone.
Fair enough.
My kids don't know that number. My
Wow.
wife doesn't know that number. How's that?
Wow. So you definitely don't want to say it on a podcast.
You think?
What's something people misunderstand about selling or exiting a brand?
The first thing is, that was an overnight success, when in fact it was, 45 years in the making. Or, boy, is he lucky, when luck had absolutely nothing to do with it. I define luck as being in the right place at the right time and having the wherewithal to strike. So it's where opportunity and preparedness meet. So I saw an opportunity, and somewhere, somehow, I was prepared along the way to seize that small opportunity and the next opportunity and the next opportunity to make it grow. But luck had nothing to do with it. So, oh boy, was he lucky. Or, wow, he walked away with 150 million, not recognizing at all that, there are other shareholders involved. Lots of misconceptions along the way.
So you mentioned, while running the business, all those years, pretty much all your money was in the business, aside from some passive stuff. After the exit, what did you do with your money?
That's where some luck came in. Because at the time, the market was going through a really down cycle. And secondly, I didn't know how I wanted to invest the proceeds. And so I did nothing for a couple of years while the market was going through a real down cycle.
Just cash.
Yeah. Bonds. And so when the market started to turn around, was the time that I started investing in equities. And so I was able to buy at a really good time. So I entered the market at a good time and watched that portfolio grow. And basically what I do today is nothing to do with apple orchards or processing plants or product formulations and product launches, but just managing a portfolio.
Just public stocks.
Private investments in companies and public stocks.
What kind of angel investments have you made? Is it like cash flowing stuff or like tech companies or?
No, diversified. So some food companies, for example, I invested in a New York-based cannabis company, which hasn't done well or well enough because of what's happened in the cannabis industry over the last 5-6 years. But now with some new legislation being promulgated, could begin to turn around as the whole industry begins to turn around.
When you sold the company and you got that wire transfer, like what was the feeling? What went through your head?
It was thrilling. It was really thrilling. I happened to have been on the golf course with my investment banker at the time. And I was on the 16th hole when the wire transfer came through.
You're just refreshing over and over?
And it was just like, because until you see that, it's not done. It's not a done deal.
Yeah.
It's not a done deal until the money's in your bank account.
Looking back, what was your least favorite part of running Apple and Eve?
I guess least favorite part would be, having to let go of people that I hired and knowing the impact it was going to have on them. Selling certain customers, not to be named, that were just extremely difficult to work with, and having to resolve problems with them when they had the upper hand, when they had the leverage. Dealing with some product scares, like, newsworthy events that came about.
Like the sugar.
Added sugar, or you wouldn't know this pesticide called Alar, but at one point, there were various news stories over the years that would point to arsenic, which is actually found in the soil and comes up through the roots and becomes a part per billion in fruit juices, and there would be these consumer scares, and I would be having to deal with the media.
I could see that being bad.
Yeah.
So if you had to start over, would you do anything differently money-wise specifically?
There's probably a lot I would have done. But then again, all decisions in business and in life are made with an insufficient amount of information. Until the decision is made, and then years later, you can reflect back and say whether or not it was a right or wrong decision. So I can second guess myself now, but it doesn't mean that based on the information available at the time that I would have done it differently. But with 2020 hindsight, I would not have sold a portion of the business in the 20th year, which I considered to have been too early on. And I know it sounds strange, because that set up subsequent sales where if I could have, and I probably couldn't have at the time, but if I could have arranged the debt financing, it would have created more value.
Do you think money makes you happy?
It sure helps. I'm certainly not going to say that it doesn't. It does help, but it doesn't make you happy. It can contribute by taking a lot of stresses and issues off the table. But if you've ever gotten to know a group of really wealthy people, you know firsthand that the issues and problems that they face with either spouses or children or friends, or most importantly, health trumps money every day of the week.
Yeah. Now people always find new problems, kind of, right?
And they do. They do. That's very insightful, because the mind searches for things that are wrong.
Yeah.
It goes back, it's been written, it goes back to even prehistoric man, where man, woman, were so focused on survival that the brain has been hardwired to seek out areas of problems, things that might go wrong, or invent things to keep one alert. And no matter how good you have it, your mind doesn't focus on how great things are, but rather the 5 or 10 or 25 things that need improvement.
Have you made any purchases like after exiting? I mean, did you buy anything that you splurged on that you have any favorite purchases?
I bought my first Bentley convertible,
Nice.
which probably became kind of an iconic tribute to myself or reward at the time. Other than that, the ability to purchase a second home in a warmer climate. Other than that, my life hasn't really changed that much. It's not about material possessions.
Yeah.
And I don't buy much in terms of material possessions, Bentley aside. So it's not about material acquisitions, it's about experiences. And so planning travel trips with my family trumps buying material possessions.
What mistakes do you think young people, maybe specifically young founders, make with money?
The entire time that I was running my business, I had tremendous balance in my life. So I wasn't working weekends. I wasn't in at 7 in the morning and out at 7 at night. I wasn't bringing work home. For the most part, I attended every soccer game, every dance recital, was involved in community, and there was balance in my life. So I think, and understandably so, that what entrepreneurs often suffer from is that balance in their lives. Steve Jobs is a perfect example, or an Elon Musk. There's so many others who just were able to create incredible wealth, but at the sake of creating real balance in their lives.
Young people often sacrifice the present thinking like, I'll get it one day and I just need to do this and get to this mountaintop. And
right.
It sounds like you had it. You always had, the balance of all of it. Do you have any controversial beliefs about money?
It's really just the trite ones. It's nothing controversial. I've given some presentations to entrepreneurial groups over the years and created what I call 10 fruits off the tree. And it's things I've learned along the way. And again, many of these will sound trite. Do what you believe in, because you're going to be doing it for a very, very long time. People will say, you got to follow your passion. You say that to someone coming out of college now, oh, follow your passion. They don't know what their passion is. So I say, get passionate about something and then see what comes from that. It's about the pursuit of a passion where the real meaning and personal growth comes. Follow your instincts. There are no gurus. Look within. So in all of the early years that I was running the company, I was looking for someone to talk to tell me which way to go, how to do this, what I shouldn't do, and what I came to learn is there is no one to really go to for those answers. Those answers exist within. Disregard those who say it can't be done. Just do it. Now, I wrote that down before Nike coined the phrase, just do it. So I'm starting this company and I'm going up against obstacles that would baffle you and baffled me. So I'm competing against Mott's, a division of Cadbury Schweppes, Ocean Spray, a $500 billion company, Minute Maid, a division of Coca-Cola, Tropicana, a division of Pepsi. These are my competitors. And the customers that I'm selling are Walmart, Publix, Stop and Shop, Costco. So these are the biggest buyers on the planet. And so the competitive set of who I'm competing with and the customers that I'm selling, and I don't know shit from Shiola. I'm starting out completely inexperienced. And people would say to me, are you crazy? You can't, there's no way you're going to be able to pull this off. And so disregard those who say it can't be done and just do it. Often good news comes in bad news costumes. So you'll get a piece of bad news. Or the day that I found out that my juices were adulterated by a bottler of mine was one of the worst days in my business career. But it gave me the impetus to go find a different bottler. And that different bottler was with me for over 40 years, became a true partner of mine in building and growing the brand and protecting the quality of the brand. So the world works in really mysterious ways. Let those do what they do best, including yourself. It's about specializing, finding out what you do best. So for us, what we did best was sell and market a brand. We never diversified into looking to buy a plant and bottle our own juices or grow our own fruits. So instead, what we did, we had everything contract packed. We didn't own anything other than a handful of computers, actually typewriters when we first started out. Don't follow the path of least resistance, but rather lasting improvement. The rewards are dramatic. When you try to take the easy way out, it won't have the lasting value of taking the more arduous path and seeing it through. One that I said before, there's no such thing as luck. Luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparedness. So what is preparedness? It's everything you do in your life to get prepared for that moment when the door opens, whether it's education, creating a healthy mindset, an open mindset about surrounding yourself with the right people. Don't give advice. It creates dependence. Instead, ask the right questions and get your people to see the answers for themselves. So you're sitting there, you're the CEO of a company, you've got 7 different departments, and you've got 100 different people working for you. And they're all looking for the answers because they're all dealing with problems. This is what they do for a living. This is what I did for a living. It's problem solving. So they would come and knock on my door. I would know what I thought to be the answer or solution to the problem, but that wouldn't prepare them for the next problem and the next problem. So either I'm going to continue to get knocks on the door, or I'm going to sit with them and help them work out the problem so that they build the mindset, the resources for problem solving. You have no control over what is, only on what you do next or about it. So shit happens. Shit is constantly happening. It's about what you do when the shit is hitting the fan, how you react. what impact it has on you, what impact it has on others who are watching you in tough situations. So it's all about understanding that you have control over very little. What you have control over is really one thing, and that's how you react. And the last for now is the journey is the reward.
I like that. To close off, so you started Apple and Eve over 50 years ago. Amazing success story. Looking back, what's the one thing you're most proud of?
So again, almost everything coming out of my mouth is probably sounding trite, but without question, it's the people I've surrounded myself with. So we'll start with the ones that I helped give birth to. So it's my kids, bring me the most pride and joy, my wife, and now her family. It's friendships. And yes, money has given me the time so that I can focus on those pursuits of health that will hopefully give me longevity and a healthy life going forward.
You think you'll start any more companies?
When I sold the company, everyone who knew me was certain that that was the first chapter. That was Act 1, and they knew Act 2 was coming. Act 2 is nothing more than just enjoying my life, enjoying the lack of stress, mentoring, especially my kids. But there was no Act 2, and I'm thrilled about that.
You climbed that hill and you're done with it.
Yep.
All right. Gordon Crane, thank you for coming on the pod.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right.
See you later.
That's a wrap.